I know the term make or break, Victoria, is used a lot when it comes to sports. Might be overused. But I was trying to think of a better way to describe this upcoming season for North Carolina basketball. It feels like it's make or break for Hubert Davis. This season is make or break in my eyes for Hubert Davis. Dennis Cox sitting in for Adam Gold this afternoon here on the Adam Gold Show. UNC basketball from this past season. By the way, there are reports out there. I know multiple places were reporting that UNC basketball had a large influx of money for NIL, that the school is investing more money in NIL for their roster, which makes sense, especially with all the money they're giving to their football team as well. But Hubert Davis talked about how they need to have more money and they needed to change things this offseason. Reportedly $14+ million in NIL money for their basketball program. I'm sure some of that is also probably tied in with the revenue sharing. But we're talking about $14 million for your roster. Now, UNC basketball from last year lost R.J. Davis, Jalen Withers. Those guys graduated. They're out of eligibility. Jalen Washington transferred. Van Allen Lubin transferred. Elliot Cadeau transferred. Ian Jackson transferred. Drake Powell goes to the NBA. I'll throw in Cade Tyson, who was kind of the ninth guy. Played in most games, but didn't really have a significant role. Not as big. Didn't contribute as much as I'm sure as UNC hoped to when they got him from the transfer portal last year. But he transferred out as well. The only guy that you really have back from last year's team that was a contributor during the season on a consistent basis was Seth Trimble. I know there's James Brown, who was a freshman last year, plays down in the post, got some playing time sparingly last year. He's back as well. But from your core group of guys that played last year, your top 8-9 guys, Seth Trimble's the only one that's back. Now, Hubert Davis did say after the season, Victoria, that he wanted to have a general manager in place, which they now have with Jim Tanner, who's an NBA agent, UNC alum, super connected with a bunch of people. So not only got the general manager, but now there's also been this investment financially, again, based off what we're seeing in the reports that are out there. So the question is, did Hubert Davis do enough with the money to build the roster that could exceed last year's disappointing season? And I'll say last year's disappointing. I'll say it. I mean, I'm sure Carolina will look at you and say the exact same thing. Disappointing year. Now, they added Jaron Stevenson from Alabama, 6'11 guy who can stretch the floor, who's from the state of North Carolina, was recruited heavily by Hubert Davis, by the way, before he decided to go to Alabama, but transferred back up here to the state of North Carolina. Henry Vistar, you got the 7-footer from Arizona, a true big in the middle. Yeah, Kyan Evans, the guard from Colorado State, is a point guard who's also can shoot pretty well. Jonathan Powell, a 6'6 wing from West Virginia. This guy's a three-point. He just what he does. He shoots threes. Not the highest percentage, but 6'6" guy that's not afraid to step outside and shoot. You got Jaden Young, a 6'4" guard from Virginia Tech. Those are some of their big transfers that they have coming in. They added some freshmen with Caleb Wilson, who's a big top 10 recruit. He's a 5-star, 6'9" forward. They added Derek Dixon and Isaiah Dennis, a couple 4-star shooting guards. They're about 6'2", 6'3". Is this roster going to exceed what last year's team did? Now, these are all Hubert Davis guys. They're all picked. There's no carryover from any previous stuff with Roy Williams, which is what R.J. Davis was. I'll get that here in just a second. Now, the roster, obviously different. You really only have, I'll say, 2 guys. Seth Trimble, one being the real one guy back from last year. Like I said, James Brown played somewhat. That's it. It's a whole new roster, basically. It's no different than what Duke had going into last year. Because Duke had a bunch of guys leaving the transfer portal. The only guys that really came back were Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. Pretty much everyone else was new. At least that contributed and played last year. Everyone else for Duke's roster last year was new. So it's really no different here with Carolina this year. But when you have nearly, by all reports, 3 times the amount of money tied up with your roster this year compared to last year. Again, these are all Hubert Davis picked guys. This is year 5 for Hubert. Remember, year 1 went to the national championship game after they got that hot run in February and March. They missed the NCAA tournament in his second year. Made the Sweet 16 a couple years ago, was a 1 seed, and then last year, barely made the NCAA tournament. They had to go to Dayton and play in the first 4. They were team number 68 of 68. hey, you're in, but that's not what Carolina's standards are. It's been up and down. That's a lot of volatility. If you have a repeat of last season, ain't going to fly again in Chapel Hill. The standard's just too high. And Hubert Davis knows that as well as anybody. Played at Carolina, obviously coached there. He sees the rafters. He's been part of it. He knows. He acknowledged that this after the season ended, he acknowledged himself that things needed to change with how they run things at Carolina. And that just the Carolina Blue and the Argyle ain't good enough anymore. The way they recruit, how they spend their money, getting a general manager, a lot of that stuff, the support staff all needed to change. It needed to adapt. Okay, so now you made those changes this season. You had the influx of money. Now it's on you as the coach to go see it through. Because again, if you have another year like you did last year, it ain't going to fly. It's just simply not going to pass. Now, Hubert Davis hasn't recruited a player. I'm sorry, I'll say this again. A Hubert Davis recruited player has never made first team All-ACC. RJ Davis and Armando Bacot were Roy Williams recruits when Roy Williams was head coach. Not saying Hubert Davis didn't have an impact in recruiting. Assistant coaches definitely do. But Armando Bacot and RJ Davis, those guys were Roy Williams recruits. Now, I understand that RJ Davis was ACC Player of the Year a couple years ago, was the shooting guard of the year in college basketball. I understand the Jerry West Award winner. I get all that. So I'm not discounting that at all. But again, Davis and Bacot are the only players to make first team All-ACC since Hubert Davis became the head coach. Does this team have the talent? Is there who on this roster that I just read to you, all those guys, who's the first team All-ACC guy? Because again, Davis, RJ Davis, Armando Bacot were brought in under the Roy Williams regime. And they're the only guys that have made first team All-ACC. Kyle Filipowski, Shire recruit, first team All-ACC. Cooper Flagg, ACC Player of the Year, first team All-ACC, Shire recruit. Shire's going into year 4. Does this team have the talent? Where's the All-ACC performer on this team? That's the big question I have going in. Not saying these players aren't good. That's not what I'm saying at all. Maybe it is Caleb Wilson, that 5-star recruit, the top 10 recruit, the big 5-star, 6'9" forward. Maybe it's him. It could be. Very well could be. But this team doesn't have the talent. Because if you have another year like you did last year, it ain't going to fly. And it would not be shocked if Carolina decided to make a change. Now, their style of play, what they're known for, Carolina basketball, Hubert Davis said that they're not changing that. Like, their philosophy on the court isn't going to change. Now, they'll adapt and tweak, obviously, to their players, but what they're known for, playing fast tempo, offensive rebounding, that should stay the same. I have no problem with that. I'm not saying they should change their style of basketball. Their style of basketball has worked. But this is a big year for Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis definitely has to get it done this year. All eyeballs. And you know what? Some people want to say thin ice. Some people want to say hot seat. Pick your temperature. It's not a comfortable one.
Yeah.
Not a comfortable one for Hubert Davis. And that's okay.
Sure.
But hey, you know what? Hubert Davis, you can cool the hot seat. You can thicken the ice, however you want to describe it. You go out there and you win this season.
And I'm sure he's aware of it, too, because last season there was definitely talk of it.
Oh, yeah.
So he's at least going into this season knowing, like, I hope things work out a little different.
They need to.
Yeah.
They simply need to. But again, you have the money and everything invested into things now. Take care of it. Take care of it now.